Hello, it's Lromanosky from Calgary, Canada, shooting from the Lugnuts facility. And what we have behind us here are, well, a bunch of cars we're actually putting on Bring a Trailer. We have the car that we're featuring in this video, the 97 Mercedes Benz SL500 R129. Behind it, in the same color, we've got a 89 420 SEL. That's a W126 body. The Citroën 2CV is on bat currently, and it is June 21st. It will end in a couple of days, as will our 2002 Honda S2000. We also have the two cars that are going on bat that have yet to be submitted. We have a 1970 Jaguar Series 2 E-Type, and we have a late model Mini in a tangerine color with a 6-speed gearbox. So kind of a neat collection of cars, starting in the $20,000 Canadian range to well over 100. Something for everybody. But so we'll do a thorough video, a long video on this car, and the intent of it is to impart the greatest degree of confidence to an online buyer who may wish to wire money, and in doing so would be sending money to somebody he doesn't know, he or she, for a car they haven't seen, maybe in a different country, maybe in a different continent. And so when we do the videos here, we go through the cars very thoroughly. We'll break the video into sections so you can skip ahead to the section that interests you. You don't necessarily have to digest the whole thing in one sitting. And we'll go through the history of, or brief history of the type of car it is, the lineage of it, when it received facelifts, how that model changed. We'll do a little bit of a dive into that. And then we'll go into doing a walk around of the exterior. We'll pick out any flaws in it. We'll do a paint meter report. We'll go through the interior. We'll lift the car on the hoist, and we'll show you the undercarriage, and then we'll do a driving video of the car. So by the end of it, maybe the video takes an hour or so, but we'll really have gone through the car in more detail than you ever would see in a showroom, because they don't have the advantage of a lift and most of the time, a knowledgeable salesman. With a little bit of history of the R129 SL Mercedes and what makes this 1997 SL500 a little bit more desirable than some of the other ones. Okay. So the R129 SL came out in 1990, and it was a very big deal. There hadn't been a new SL since 1973 when the R107 came out. In fact, there were only 3 SLs before this car: the original Gullwing and its sister car, the 300 SL Roadster, the Pagoda, which was 63 to 71, and then the R107 from, I guess, 1972 all the way up to 1989. So this was launched to great fanfare. There were lots of elaborate Mercedes parties and so on. And I remember elaborate watercolors of the lineage of the SL and so on. It was very fancy. The first cars were selling for $20,000 over list price. They were extremely expensive. This car was $120,000 in 1990. A price which bought you a nice house, actually. The entire 1990 was a big year for Mercedes because they also revamped their S-Class, which was the 126 behind me there, and the successor to it was the W140, and that came out in 1991, I guess. And so in the early 90s, Mercedes revamped quite a bit of their product line because they only had like 4 cars. Now they have like 25 cars. They kept their 190 series, the small sedan, and the E-Class, which were redesigned in the mid-80s. And then the S-Class and the Roadster, they only had 4 cars, were redesigned in the 90s. Along with the new bodies came new engines. And so the old S-Class there has a 117 V8 that would have debuted in 1971, I think, in the 280 SE 3.5, all the way up to 1989, almost 2 decades. So the engines for the 90s were completely modern, 4-cam, 4-valve per cylinder. So in a V8, it was a 32-valve, 4-cam, 5-liter V8. They also carried through the twin-cam 6 with the 4-valve head that would have started in the E-Class in, well, I guess in 1986, but it just got its 4-valve head in the early 90s, so that was a new engine. And then they came out with a 6-liter V12, 4-valve per cylinder, 48-valve V12 engine. So the SL series and the S-Class were all new, and you could get them in different engines. You could get this car in the 3.26, the 5-liter V8, and the 6-liter V12. For the S-Class, you had some more options. There was a diesel, and you could get the 320. There was a 420, 500, a 600, and a diesel for a while. Okay, so the V12 cars, the 600s, were quite a bit more expensive, maybe 50% more expensive. And in addition to having the larger engine, they had sort of every option. And they also were characterized by very fancy interiors, two-tone interiors with leather dashboards and contrast stitching and so on. Okay. With the 129, which came out in 1990, it received a couple of facelifts. When it was originally introduced, the lower cladding was a different color, similar to the sedan in the background. And then I think in the mid-90s, they started painting the lower portions of the bodywork, which are plastic, the same color as the metal bits on top. So they were one color, okay? And then the 129 got an engine change in midway through 1998 for the 1999 model year, and they went away from the architecture of the twin cam per bank, 4-valve per cylinder engines, which this is, and they went to a simpler engine, a single overhead cam per bank, 3-valve per cylinder, and I think it was two inlet valves and 1 exhaust, if I'm not mistaken. Could be wrong on that. Anyway, it was still a pretty good engine, the 3-valve engine, single overhead cam. It had 300 horsepower, but it was down on power from the 4-valve engine, which had 322. And the 4-valve engine's just a little bit more exciting at higher revs. It has better breathing, 4-valve per cylinder, better volumetric efficiency, and better peak horsepower. The 3-valve engine, I think, was better for emissions, and it had good low-end torque characteristics. So it wasn't a bad engine. It just didn't have the purity, let's say, of the 4-valve per cylinder twin cam with the spark plug on top. It just that's kind of an iconic. I want to say iconic. It's probably not the best word, but that is really, from an engineering point of view, the best arrangement for volumetric efficiency, and it produced the most power. Okay, so which year, if you're looking for an R129 SL, which year, would you want? Well, I think that the 5-liter 4-valve engine is a nicer engine than the one from the 99, 2000, 2001, and 2002s, okay? And for 1996 and 1997 only, the SL500's got the 600 interior. So we can take a look at that. And we can see that this is the Java interior, so two-tone, brown and beige, with a leather dashboard, contrast stitching. It really is quite a lot fancier than the standard interior, which gives you much simpler door cards and a much simpler dashboard and single-tone seats. Also, the quality of the leather is different. This leather is much thicker, and I don't know exactly the differences in terms of tanning and so forth, but it's more of a natural leather, and it's much thicker, and I would say it's much more durable. So this interior is a definite upgrade. You got it in the 600s, but if you bought a 600, you also had to deal with the complexity of the V12 engine, and even though it's a reliable engine, the problem with it is it's so large that there's no room in the engine bay whatsoever. So if you even have the slightest leak from something, you have to rip a whole bunch of stuff out to get at it. And so the bills on those can be considerable. This is a much easier engine to service. And also the torque characteristics of this engine, it doesn't feel any slower than the V12 until maybe 4,000 or 4,500 RPM, when the V12, it races to the red line a little bit harder. But in normal driving, the V8 feels every bit as torquey as the 12. It's also lighter too, which helps. Okay, so where I'm going with this is if you're looking for an R129, a 90s Mercedes SL, I think the 6-cylinder is just a little bit, it just has to work a little bit too hard to motivate this car, which is close to 4,000 pounds. So I would kind of cross that off. The V12 is nice, but again, you pay for that complexity. Just even the nature of the V12 engine itself, with the V angle and the way components need to be placed around it, means it's going to be much higher maintenance than an 8. Essentially, the V12, to get it balanced properly, it has to be a 60-degree angle, and a 60-degree angle is too narrow to put all the intake plumbing inside the V, unless you have a big hood scoop. And so all the intake manifolds have to be on the side of the engine, which means that, if you have to replace your valve covers or anything on the engine, you have to remove all the intake stuff first. And I see that with my Jag V12s. Just every job is just a lot harder. The V8, all V8s, or virtually all V8s, have a 90-degree V angle, so the intake equipment can be in the center of the V, which means the valve covers lay on the side of the engine and are easily accessible. And overall, it's just a much simpler, easier configuration of an engine to work on than the 12. So if you're looking for an R129, I would get an SL500. And if I was getting an SL500, I would want the 4-cam engine. That's up to the 1998 model year. And I also really love this 600 interior. So that means if I was looking for an SL, I would look for the 96 or 97 model years. In addition to that, there are some rare options which are also highly desirable. One of them is a sport package, which this car doesn't have, although it does have AMG wheels. The other one is the panoramic roof. And this is highly desirable. They sell on Bring a Trailer for, I've seen them for up to $8,000 just for the roof alone. And it gives you a glass panel, and if you want to show the camera inside the car, we can see there's a sunshade that we can pull over. I'll just see if I can. So then the sunshade then can extend and cover the glass area. So the panorama roof is a really desirable option. This car is stock in every way except the wheels and the AMG badge on the back. Now these wheels were what the successor SL500, I think the 203, the SL55 had these 18-inch wheels as standard. So I remember I sold Mercedes Benz in that era, and I remember this was a popular upgrade to get the wheels from the next generation SL55 and put them on this car. And actually what happened is there was a lot of guys who bought SL55s, the brand new cars, who went and put Brabus wheels or Carlson wheels or whatever, whatever other wheels on the car to make their SL55s a bit fancier. And they didn't want these 18-inch OEM wheels. So we got quite a few sets of these, which then we sold happily to owners of R129s to upgrade their cars. Okay, so other than that and this SL or this AMG badge, this car is completely stock. Okay. Okay, so let's just do an exterior walk around. Now I know the car has had some paint work. there is an invoice in the file for a new bumper cover, which has been painted. A lot of those are chewed up, and so having a new bumper cover actually is a good thing, even if it is on the Carfax. I also believe the hood has been repainted as well, but let's deal with the paint. Let's deal with the paint thickness, and we'll paint meter it. Factory paint depth on one of these cars is around 150 micrometers, and I can show you that on this car actually, because it has never been touched. It's been polished a bit, so it's probably, the paint depth is probably a little bit less, but I'm getting readings in the low to mid hundreds and like 149. And this car is unquestionably original paint. So based on that, and it's even the same color, smoke silver. So let's go through this Benz. I believe that the hood on this has been repainted. Yeah, so I'm getting numbers 377, 467, and that's consistent with a quality repaint. So we know the hood on this has been repainted, although it's an excellent job, and I don't see any evidence of any prep work at all, actually. It's a very good job. So, okay, so consistent paint depth in and around the 4 to 450 range means a quality repaint. We go to the front fender, and it also has been repainted, and it's in the 4s. And again, I don't see any flaws, any sanding marks, any orange peel. It looks like factory paint, but it measures as a repaint. So we go to the driver's door, and now we're 196, 204, 195, and 190. Okay, so I would call this as original paint on the door. It matches the front fender perfectly. I cannot tell that one panel is painted and the other hasn't, but this is what the machine says. And let's go to the rear. 231, 242, 240, 248. So the rear fender. The numbers in the 2s are harder to gauge because it's a little bit too thin to be a complete repaint, and we see that because a complete repaint's a 4, and this is in the mid 2s, but 250 is a little bit high to be original paint, and so I interpret that as this panel was blended or cleared. In other words, they painted an adjacent panel, but to make the paint match, they cleared, into the panel that has original paint. So I believe on this quarter that the paint is original, but it has been re-cleared. That's why it's 248 instead of the 200 of the door. If I go to the trunk lid, I get 239, 240, and 284. And if I go to the fender, passenger rear fender, 222, 229, 237, 221. The passenger door, 132, 131, 109, 123. So the door has original paint and clear, and 244, 242, 259, and 461. So I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell exactly what happened to the car. It's received some paint work. It is a combination of meter readings in the 100s, which is original paint. I'm certain about that because I can compare it against the car right behind it in the same color and get the same measurement. Just to demonstrate, I put my paint meter on this door and I get 99.7, and I put my paint meter on this door and I get 135, and I'm sure I could find a place where I also get 99. Anyway, the car has, the two doors are original paint. The hood has definitely been repainted. The driver's fender has definitely been repainted. The other panels appear to have been cleared. So if I was to hypothesize, what I think is the most likely scenario is that the hood and fender were repainted and the rest of the car was cleared. I think that's what happened, excepting the doors. I don't, like I said, I don't have a crystal ball. What I can tell you is that there's nothing scary in it. Whether it's 0.1, 0.2, or 0.4 of a millimeter, it's consistent throughout. There's no big gaps. There's no big variations in it. It's not like I'm going to some places in the car and it's 1 millimeter or worse, nothing comes up showing a bunch of Bondo and a poorly repaired car, okay? So we have a body shell which is unrusty. There's no evidence of corrosion. The paint looks excellent. There's no orange peel. There's no prep marks. If we didn't have a paint meter, you could pass the car as original paint. It's just that this of course doesn't lie, and it shows that it did get some work done at some point. I can't be sure of exactly when, but it was all done to a very good standard, and that I can assure you of, because again, you know, we have, like I said, two cars in the same color, and if you look at the paint in both cars, you can't tell the difference, okay? So that's probably the best example or the best, you know, the best evidence that the paint was done. Anybody can come to Lugnuts, look at both cars, and judge for yourself. It looks excellent. Okay. And I can pick out some flaws. There's not too many. The bumper cover has been replaced and is refinished and is perfect. Most of them are scraped up and cracked, okay? So that is good. The grille looks nice. Sometimes, you know, the car has the odd rock chip in it on the front, not very many. You know, these pieces can be, you know, vulnerable to denting and so on, and they're not. The Brightwork still looks in excellent shape. The badge isn't faded. The lights aren't cracked, and they're not yellowed. Oftentimes they'll either cloud over or get a yellow tinge. We still have the working headlamp washers, which in this era were little wipers. Now, of course, they just have squirters. On the bonnet itself, there's really not, I mean, I guess there's one mark there we can pick up, and that's it. The windscreen, Calgary's not a great place to buy new windscreens because there's lots of rocks on the road. And this windscreen actually, now that I recall, is recent. It was replaced not too long ago, and it looks in perfect shape. There are no marks in it, as is the glass in the panoramic roof. I'd hate to try to replace that. Anyway, the panorama roof, which is a key option on this car and a very desirable one, is in perfect shape. These hardtops are pretty heavy, and they have big pins that locate them in the rear, and it's a little bit awkward to pick the hardtop up and carry it up and then back. So sometimes people drop them on the rear of the car, and you get these big scratches on the, right behind the edge of the hardtop. We don't see it. Going into the rear trunk area, I mean, I've seen people put boxes and stuff on the cars and on the trunk and dent them or scratch them, and you don't see that. Rear bumper also looks excellent. The rear lights are uncloudy and uncracked, okay? So the wheels are all in excellent shape. I don't recall any curb rash on any of the wheels. And I'm just verifying that now, and I don't see them, and they are genuine AMG wheels, not knockoffs. The tires are old, and they are starting to, you can see the odd little bit of dry cracking starting, and so the tires should be replaced. Yeah, I don't see the date code, but there is the invoice in the file, and they're definitely aged. Okay. The car presents, I mean, it's really hard to find a fault with the way it looks. I know there was a little chip here on the end of the door. There's a little door ding that is right there behind the driver's door handle. I don't recall any other marks on the car. Down the flank of the car on the passenger side, I do not see any door dings at all or any scratches, any imperfections. On the surface of the trunk lid, I don't. Just the one little door ding in the rear driver's quarter. The rest of the flank looks perfectly smooth to me. And there's no other obvious cosmetic faults on the exterior of the car. So limited, I guess there's this right here. A couple little stone chips on the leading edge of the front fender. But overall, nothing that you would notice if you look at it, even perfectly clean, even under fluorescent lights in a controlled environment, you have to look pretty hard to find anything wrong with the exterior of the car, and it's a great color for the car. Okay. And we can go through the interior now, and we can have a look. Overall, the interior presents really nicely. The 600 interior is very rich, and it's incredibly high quality. The burl wood is still dark. If cars from sunnier climates, can have bleached wood on the door cards and on the center console, so we can get a look at that. And it's still dark. That's one of the things I look for with these cars is how dark the burl wood is. Because if it's bleached out, you can bet that the leather is as well. If we can focus on the driver's bolster, we see a little bit of wear, a little bit of the stitching coming a little bit loose there, but nothing on the seat base, nothing on the passenger base. We can see this car has the wood and leather steering wheel, and we can see that there is some cracking on the top part of the wood where it was exposed to the sun, although there's no cracking to the center console, which is usually where you see it on these cars. We do see a little bit of damage to the top of the leather dash or the door card, and it looks like it received some water damage and then it was repaired, and that repair now is starting to fail. So this piece of leather looks like it got damaged, probably from one of the windows being left open. The rest of the door card looks in good shape. The burl wood is uncracked. The carpets and passenger seat leather are all in excellent shape. We can see a little bit of wear here on this plastic piece on the sill. Very, very slight scuffing on the stainless trim. Otherwise, the interior shows extremely well. This top of this door card, I mean, if you were to do anything, you might address that by letting a new piece of leather in or finding a replacement piece from Mercedes. Other than that, the 600 interior has held up extremely well, and the main thing is that the leather dash hasn't shrunk, and the burl wood is still in good shape. Carpets are still in good shape, and there's no stains, tears, or rips. Under the hood, we do see some deterioration from the hood pad. And that's actually rapidly deteriorating. It didn't look like that last week. So this will need to be replaced, but it's just foam. Otherwise, the engine bay presents well. Everything appears to be in place. All the correct covers are there. Looks like all the factory routing for the vacuum hoses, all the electrical parts, etc. No evidence that somebody was in here who didn't know what they were doing. There's no evidence of anything leaking. And the engine runs, well, I suppose there's, let's see. Well, I suppose there's a little bit of sweating from this area of the cam covers. But again, because this is a V8 and you know, the intake is in the center of the V, it leaves the valve covers easily accessible. Otherwise, it's nothing abnormal there. The VIN plate is kind of strangely placed in these cars where you can't really see it, but maybe you can try to get some of the numbers off that. And those show the option codes, etc. And the ones you want to see are the ones you can't photograph. VIN here, ending in 5811. And we'll also have a VIN plate on the side ending in 5811. And we see a little Canadian flag that denotes it as a Canadian market car. And in fact, it was sold from Lone Star, which is only about 10 minutes away from here. Okay, so for this part of the video, we'll demonstrate the operation of the soft top, removing the hard top, etc. I know it's like a big R129 thing. The convertible top operation, are the top cylinders leaking, etc., etc. And if you read about 129s, that's all that comes up is cylinders for the soft top. I've been around these cars a long time, and I've dealt with 20 or 25 of them. I've never actually had one with leaking top cylinders. So maybe that's just from Canada, where people just leave the soft top or leave the hard top on and forget about it. I've handled several of these cars where the soft top's never been raised. The hard top's never been off the car. So anyway, but we'll go through this. We'll unlatch the hard top. I might as well tell you how to take it off safely. And then we'll cycle through the soft top a few different times, just so you have confidence that it actually works properly. So, and we hear it unlatch. Okay. We need to be a little bit careful to undo the clip for the heated rear window. The hard top is secured by these two big pins in the back, and they can make a horrible mess of your bodywork. So it's probably good practice to put these cloths under there. We will, Aiden and I can lift the hard top off, and then we can raise and lower the soft top for you and show you how that works. Okay, and so we'll do the soft top now. Start the car just to make it a little bit easier on it. Never seen anything leak in this car. There's some photographs of the mechanism. In fact, I've never seen any 129 have soft top leaks, but like I said, like I hypothesized, that's just probably because nobody in Canada puts the roof down, or at least in Calgary. Okay, so that is up, and let's go back down now. and the windows synchronized properly. And just to show you that that's not a fluke, we'll do it one more time. Okay, so that all works perfectly well, which I think is most people's primary concern with the car. Okay, so we'll put the top back down and we'll put the hard top back on this car. So with the hard top in place, then and we're done. So now we'll do a cold start. We'll fire the engine up. We'll have a look at the oil pressure and temperature. Then we'll go for a drive in the car. And during the drive, I'll maybe give some commentary on what I think of the R129 and of this car. So I'll start it up, and then we can get some sound from the engine bay. And the oil pressure pegs instantly at 3 bar, as it's supposed to. And we don't hear any funny noises from the engine. The valve train is quiet. The belts and so on don't squeak. We don't have any, obviously, serious noises from the bottom end of the car. The idle is steady, quite a bit steadier than it is in the older CIS injection cars, which tend to hunt around a little bit. And so really nothing remarkable here at all, only that the engine runs perfectly and isn't making any strange noises, valve train's quiet, etc. So not really much to show you here other than what it doesn't do, and it operates correctly. So let's get... Okay, so we see that the engine's been idling for a minute or so. We have a little bit of temperature in the coolant, and we have a full 3 plus bar of oil pressure, which we expect. Mileage is at 133,501 kilometers. So what's that? 90-odd thousand, 85,000 miles, something like that. And the car is running 0W40 oil, and there's no warning lights on the car. The climate control works well. The AC blows cold. Let's just set that at a comfortable temperature. The radio, for whatever reason, doesn't work, and I don't know why. It just decided to quit. So those can be taken out and sent away to get repaired, or more likely you're going to probably retrofit it with something with some modern electronics and Bluetooth and so on, so you can use the car's speakers for your stored music on your phone. Let's just try the roll bar in the back, and that does come up and down properly, and we do see that it has the wind deflector installed. We have the panoramic roof in this car, panorama roof, and it has the shade that we can extend, or we can leave it back. There's no cracks in the glass, and the shade works well. We've got all the windows work properly, the mirrors all work properly. Heated seats, driver and passenger. Windows roll down smoothly, go up and down smoothly. Okay, all that stuff works. And seat controls are in the door panel on the R129s. Very fancy seats with integrated seat belts into the seat back, which was a world first. And even the seat, if you adjust the headrest, it takes the height of the seat belt with you. So, and these seats are, I think, magnesium, some exotic material, and I can't remember what they cost as a part, but it was like, I think they were $10,000 each or something. So let's get going here and put it in drive. This car did have some transmission work done to it quite a while ago, but I think it had a rebuilt gearbox. It works perfectly well, but that was done to the car, I think around 10 or 15,000 kilometers ago. Anyway, there's no slop in the drivetrain and no drivability issues. Do the windows up. And then the car becomes quite a refined cruiser, which is really this car's forte. It's probably a little bit too heavy to be called sports light or a sports car. But they're excellent day-to-day drivers, daily drivers, and they're excellent cars on the highway. They're good for 150 miles an hour, and they're incredibly stable, as you'd expect an S-Series Mercedes to be. The interior, I think, presents really well. I mean, there's the one flaw that we know of on the top of the passenger side door panel, but that's about it. The wood is still dark, and we have just a couple little cracks. These always crack. There's not much you can do about that. But the wood isn't bleached, which tells me it was out of the sun, and that is also confirmed by the lack of cracking on the dashboard or shrinkage of the leather. Sometimes the springs in the seats can sag if the owner was heavier set, and you know, the seat could be quite squishy, and that's not the case here. So the seat feels the way it should, with you know, firm support and firm padding, and we don't have any noticeable bolster wear on the driver's seat. We can see that in the interior section of the video, and we'll just run it up through the gears. Lots of torque from the 4-cam engine. Nice exhaust note. It's a fast car, effortless. Compliance from the suspension is excellent. This is not a very nice road, and you'll get shaken about in most cars, but this car, even with the lower profile 35 and 40 series rubber, still has lots of compliance. It's still a very comfortable car. It does an excellent job of soaking up the bumps while still feeling like planted and in control. You know, typical Mercedes suspension. The car brakes. There's no pulsation from the brake discs or vibration from the brakes, and it stops true. Idle sets back down. We're now at just about 80 degrees Celsius coolant, and we're still at 3 bar. Picks that, and that's why I really like this 4-cam engine. You know, it kind of races to redline with a little bit more authority and sounds better, in my opinion, than the replacement engine, which was a much simpler arrangement with single overhead cam and 3 valve per cylinder. This is twin cam per bank, 4 valve per cylinder, 32 valves in total, and it's the I would say the purest from an engineering standpoint way to do a V8 engine. 90 degree V, of course. All the intake equipment in the center of the V, and then two cams per bank. Pent roof combustion chamber, or Hemi as you call it, and you know, the valves placed around the spark plug. So from an engineering standpoint, volumetric efficiency and outright power, you know, it's the preferred layout. and what most of the really high performance V8 engines would share that architecture. Mercedes went away for that to meet stricter emissions regulations, and also the later V8 engines, which are also good engines, don't get me wrong, but they were simpler to manufacture. They don't sound quite as nice, particularly in the upper reaches of the rev range. We have a power wheel, tilt and telescope that works. We have drivers and passenger airbags. That was all standard in this car. The R129 SL series was a car of many firsts. It was the first car, I think, with a fully electric top that did not require any work to, finish it by clasping it to the windscreen frame, and there was no tonneau to put up. So it was in 1990. It was a world first for that. It was, I believe, the first time we've seen the seat belts integrated into the seat frame. So that was a first. We have this deployable roll bar in the back, and it goes up in 0.3 of a second. And I think if the car experiences a G-force of something like 4 Gs, or the chassis gets an angle over a certain amount, then this will deploy very, very quickly. It makes a hell of a bang in 0.3 seconds. So, if the car was suddenly to launch and turn upside down, that roll bar would protect the occupants, along with a lot of high-strength steel in the windscreen frame to make that really strong. So you've got this one support in the front and then one behind your head. So for a convertible, I think unquestionably you'd call it the world's safest convertible. So that was another Mercedes trademark. And what else was new? Well, for Mercedes, the 4-cam engine, they wouldn't have done a 4-cam V8 before. They replaced the M117 single overhead cam V8. AMG did a 4-cam V8 for their Hammer and their series of cars in the mid-80s. And then in 1990, Mercedes did the same thing with that 4-cam V8 with 4 valves per cylinder. So that was another first for Mercedes. This car was also introduced with the S-Class that came, I guess, a couple years later, but with these same engines, and also along with the SL, the V12. And that was also twin camper bank. So let's just test the gearbox, 60 kilometers an hour. It downshifts right away, rips to red line, and we're going seriously quickly. And even over big potholes, it really maintains its composure. Wind noise is excellent. Even on old tires, there's not a lot of tire noise. And the ambience in the cabin with the panorama roof is really quite nice, airy and spacious. So this car made quite a big impact when it came out. And you have to picture that the older SL, the 107, had been in production since 1972. And they made about 300,000 of them in coupe and roadster forms, about 75% of them roadsters. So that car was I mean, it's a lovely car, but in 1989, it was a pretty old design, the origins of which go back into the 1960s. So you have to picture 300,000 Mercedes 107 owners who then see this brand new car with its fully automatic top that's infinitely easier to use than the R107. It's a lot easier to get in and out of. The drivability is a lot better. You've got much more advanced AC and climate control. You have airbags, which the R107 didn't have. You have traction control, ABS braking. I mean, there were so many advances that this had over the older model that a lot of those 300,000 people that bought R107s wanted the new one. And so there was a couple-year wait for the car, and I remember being offered one for $20,000 over list price in 1990. So it was, and there's lots of people who think that this is the peak SL, and these cars are owned by, Harry Metcalf from Evo magazine and Chris Harris from Top Gear. They're automotive celebrities that have put their money on this car, and of course what has to be considered astounding value. This car was $120,000 when it came out, and that would have bought you a nice house in Calgary in 1990. If they only made 2,000 of these cars, they'd be $250,000 cars. But they made 200,000 of them, and so there's always so many that are on the market and so many that are on the road that it keeps the values of the cars down. There's no real collectible car, that you can have a production run of 200,000 on. The minute the price goes up, there's so many people that sell that it brings the price back down again. But that's good for the enthusiast who just wants, a beautiful, older Mercedes and doesn't want to pay the collector car, premium. So, for an extremely reasonable amount of money, you can have like the top of the line Mercedes from the 90s. And, it's a fast car, it's a comfortable car, it's a reliable car. I mean, there's Mercedes dealers everywhere. The parts aren't expensive. So, there's lots of Mercedes specialists. So the ownership proposition with the low initial outlay, because the car is not that expensive to buy, and the very reasonable, repair costs and so on. Again, because they made so many of them, they put the parts were in mass production. Mercedes Benz supports it, so you can go to the dealer and just about buy anything you want from the car, and the price is reasonable. So the car's been fully depreciated for quite a while now. So your initial outlay is low, and your depreciation is limited, and your running costs are, very reasonable. And so you put all that together, and what it means is you could be driving one of these top-of-the-line 1990 Mercedes convertibles for less than, virtually any new car that you can buy. It feels special, like every time you get in and drive it. And, it's got the absolute highest quality materials, from an era where Mercedes, they let the engineers design the car and the accountants price the car, and it was, they were always a lot of money, maybe 50% more than a BMW or a Jaguar, and they were the best cars in the world, and they had the highest resale and the highest sales rating and the highest owner retention, and anything that really could be measured, Mercedes was right at the very top. And you paid a lot for it, and you got what you paid for, and that's the era these cars came from, and that's why they have to be considered the one of the best used car and classic car bargains at the moment. This car behaves impeccably, drives really nice. There's no warning lights, no unusual noises, squeaks, vibrations. Everything works well, and it's not so low mileage that you might be afraid to drive it. You just get in this car, drive it, enjoy it, use it, and all for not a lot of money. So. Okay, so I pulled the documentation file for this 1997 Mercedes Benz SL500. I've organized it into various piles, and with this, we get a general idea of the car's story and history. I don't have too much prior to 2010, but I've got a reasonable amount of documentation from then. So the car sold new by Lone Star Mercedes Benz. It went into service in April in the spring of 1997. We've got a spec sheet on the car. The Carfaxes only go back to 2001. but I see it has a constant ownership from then with no change in registration. So I'm going to hypothesize that the original owner had the car for, I think usually new car buyers like that on this classic car keep them for 3-4 years and trade them in. And that would make sense. So we go from 97 to 01, and then we have constant ownership till about 2012 or 2013. And about 120,000 kilometers. And then it passes to the third owner of the cars. Okay, so then I pick up the maintenance trail from the second owner at around 110,000 kilometers or so. We have new 18-inch wheels. Now those didn't come with the car. Those are from the SL500. And I think those are the tires on it now. So the tires on it now are 13 years old. They have lots of tread on them. It went in for some transmission work, for Astro transmission, and what did they do? Removed the gearbox, found some burnt clutches, and replaced all those parts. So that's a $4,000 bill in 2010 at 112,000 kilometers. Okay, so it got that done. Another $1,000 bill for a steering gearbox to be removed and resealed. Okay, it gets a new convertible top in 2011 in brown. That's the top that's on there now. And we have some minor stuff, lamp bulbs, and inspect the brakes and switches and so forth. We have a soft brake pedal, and the brakes are bled. We have some vibrations from the tires. We have check engine light. Too extraordinary. We've got water pump. These are common problems. $1,000 for that, or $900 for that. Some relays, electrical issues, vents, climate control, all the usual stuff on a car that is now 117,000 kilometers. A transmission pilot bushing, so that was more. $3,500 bill there. And then removing the water pump and installing it. Okay, so then that takes us to about 120,000 kilometers, and we are in October 2012. It goes to the new owner. He brings it in with some clunking in the steering, and the first thing he does is spend $5,500 on front end work. That's why you don't want to buy a cheap Mercedes. It goes pretty quick. So we've got ball joints, idler arm bushings, adjusting wheel bearings. We have tie rod ends, ball joints, sway bar bushings, broken springs, and that's $5,500. That's the first thing that happens. And then he goes through and refinishes some wheels and some cosmetics, and some battery for the keys, gets another key. There's a $2,800 bill for interior work. Doesn't sound like the door panels were in great shape, and there still is a flaw in the door panels, so we can see where that originated. We have some issues to the door locking, the remote door locking, which is common. You know, he's still kind of new to the car, 121,000 kilometers, and still in 2013. Door locks sorted. Well, there's a slight suspension noise. Check engine lights. Now we have a brand new front bumper that's got refinished, and also repainting the hood and fenders. So we did see that in the paint meter report, that there was front end work, like a repaint, no filler in the front. And when I looked at it for the first time, I thought, oh, this is unusual. The front bumpers on these are usually cracked up, and well, it was, and it was been replaced. Okay, so that was done in let's see, get a date here. Come on. That was done in 2014. Okay. We have just for tires. Then it goes to Continental. Continental Auto Service is a reputable shop. I think he got tired of paying Lone Star prices. And so we've got check engine lights, wiper arms, usual stuff. And that's in 13 again, another $1,600. And electrical system, heater control, bulbs, etc. That's not very much. And wiper blades, windshield, another windshield, and then power steering flush. Looks like it got the steering box taken out again, and it was done before, but it got done for the second time here. And those are common. That is actually fairly common. And then it goes back to Continental for some minor stuff. And there you have it. Okay, so we've got the car, always a Calgary car, sold new by Lone Star, which is like about 10 kilometers from here. It's got 3 owners. The first guy has it for, up to 4 years, sells it to the second owner, has it for a decade, sells it to the third owner for the decade. It gets the usual stuff, front end work and work to the remote door locks and, water pumps, etc. Nothing extraordinary in there. It has a repair invoice for $5,500 or $5,000 for the repainting of the front clip. No damage that we can see, just repaint. And so the current owner's had it for a decade, spends 15 grand on the car, not including the price of the car. And $5,500 of that was immediately spent on the front end. 5 grand on refinishing the front hood and bumper. Another 3 grand refinishing some of the interior, and then some miscellaneous work. But more or less, I think once he got the car in 13 and spent a couple of years sorting it out, it hasn't really been driven that much. It only has about 135,000 kilometers on it now. So 10 years ago, he buys the car with 120, drives it for a couple of years, sorts the thing out, and then it's been, hasn't really done much to it for the last 10 years except for regular servicing. Okay, so that is the car's story as best I can tell by talking to the current owner and looking through all this documentation. Okay, for the last portion of the video, we can show you 40 or so close-up photographs of the undercarriage of this 1997 Mercedes Benz SL500. We took the under trays off as to give a better view of the engine, which would then you'd be able to see if it was leaking, which it isn't, and the general condition of the undercarriage. And what we see is it's nearly corrosion-free. There's a little bit of surface rust on a few of the fasteners, but very, very limited. And for its age and mileage, I don't know that you could expect a cleaner undercarriage than this car. It's had a lot of maintenance in the last 10,000 kilometers. There's nothing underneath the car that was visible to me anyway that it needed. All the bushings looked good. In fact, many of them have been replaced. There's no slop in the suspension or steering wheel bearings, etc. There's no holes in the exhaust. There's no damage on the no damage underneath at all. A couple of the under trays, which are in the picture gallery, not on the car, in these videos, are a little bit rough. They're a little bit chewed up, but I took close-ups of the part numbers so you could, if you wanted to reorder those parts. They're just plastic under trays. They're not expensive. But overall, we see the main things are corrosion-free, and we don't see any evidence. I took care to show the front, the front bumper supports and so forth in some of these photographs. There's no evidence of any collision or repair to any of the front cross members or the body. So the body shell is nice, undercarriage is nice in this car, and now that we've had it on the hoist and cleaned it, it's spotless as well.